From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
Today is Tuesday, February 24th, 2009. This is Norman Middleton, Senior Music Specialist at the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. We are here in the Library of Congress studios with legendary Motown artist Stevie Wonder. Welcome to the Library of Congress, Mr. Wonder.
My pleasure, thank you.
Your appearance last night in the library's Coolidge Auditorium and your concert at the White House on Wednesday evening are both in conjunction with you receiving the Gershwin Prize for Popular Song. And in conjunction with receiving the Gershwin Prize, you have written a piece commissioned by the Library of Congress that you premiered last night in the Coolidge Auditorium. And we know that you've been thinking about this piece for a long time, have you not?
I most definitely have been thinking about it for a long time.
And what is the title of your new piece?
The piece is Sketches of a Life.
Sketches of a Life. What does that title mean to you?
Well, for me, it's sketches of my life, different musical experiences that I've had, those influences that you can hear in the piece. And the 9 movements, you can hear the various places and experiences musically that I've had in my life.
And yesterday in the press conference, when you discussed the commission, you mentioned that the basic idea of the new piece began back in 1976. What was it about this music that caused you to return to it in 1976?
Well, you know, I really have always had a love for classical music. I've had a love for all various genres of music, and the more that I was able to hear, there was then the more that I was able to enjoy. As a little boy, the radio was my eyes and ears to the world, and so I would imitate the different sounds that I would hear, the voices. If I heard opera, I would, I wouldn't know the opera obviously, but I would sing, or whatever that was, just. Or different languages that I would hear. I didn't know how to speak Spanish, but I remember hearing once someone say on the radio, "para ti," and so I would, say "para ti." So finally I learned that it meant for you, sort of a toast, celebration. But it was the sound of all those different things that influenced me. And there was a woman who lived in our neighborhood. We lived in Detroit, on the west side of Detroit. There was a woman who would dress up every time there was an opera in Detroit, and she would go. And throughout the week, she would play these various things. And so, you got to imagine, in the neighborhood that I lived in, predominantly you did not have people that were listening to operas. And so, you hear this, cut all that noise out. What's wrong with you? But obviously, for me, it was an interesting thing because I know how much she appreciated it. And from that, I later on wrote the song Village Ghettoland, which has sort of an operatic, feel to it, a classical feel to it, talking about the conditions living in Village Ghettoland.
I also thought that was an interesting juxtaposition. When I first heard Village Ghettoland, I said, oh, that's interesting. Stevie has done this sort of string quartet type thing underneath lyrics that are somewhat dark and describing the type of lives that people live in that part of the city. So I also thought that was interesting how you did that. Your commission, the commission that you did for the Library of Congress, it was originally thought of or proposed as a work for violin and piano, but you expanded it into a work for chamber orchestra. Can you elaborate on this musical metamorphosis, including your collaboration with Motown arranger Paul Reiser?
Well, I've known Paul since he was 19. I was maybe 11 or 12. And we've been close all those years. Paul has done some arranging for me. The first song that he did strings for me was on a song that I wrote called Pretty Little Angel. I think I was like 13 or 14. And I always liked how he was able to accompany the melodies that I had, how he made them all work together, no different than his arrangement with what he did with My Cherie Amour and the different various songs that I had done. And as well with I Never Dreamed You'd Leave in Summer, and what he did with another song that is Overjoyed, and obviously he did the arrangement to Rocket Love. And the various songs, he always, we seemed as one. He knew what I was feeling, so I think he would listen to the voicings that I would do on piano, and he would then work with however he did his magic to make it all work together. In the case of Sketches of a Life, I played the piece for him, and as much as it was originally just for the strings and a violin and piano, I felt, because many times I would play the harmonica, and I always felt a sort of kinship to the violin when playing the harmonica, and as well the saxophone, like the soprano sax. And so I always wanted to play that instrument with violins and or with horns. And so to me there were various places in the piece that to me lent itself to having the harmonica in it. And the one place that I did use the harmonica in was a part of the piece that was really a song that has always reminded me of my mother. And so that's where I played it. And you could hear in that piece, that movement, sort of a longing in the world or for the world, and a longing, in retrospect now, and then I lost my mother in 2006, a longing for her and a longing for people to come together and the world to come together and all those various things, and a missing of all the people that we've lost, but as well as celebration for feeling that so many things that we have longed for the good of humankind, becoming a reality. And so that part of it talks about that. And that's why I felt, it had to be more than just for a violin and piano. And I was so excited that it became more of a chamber orchestra as opposed to just, a very simple thing. The piece itself at various places is very grand. There's another movement that really is a celebration of Nelson Mandela, because I knew that Nelson Mandela may have been a prisoner, but ultimately I believed he would be the president as he was in South Africa.
When you, as you were writing this piece, I know that it contains several different types of ideas, musical ideas within the entire work. But did you originally conceive this work to be of any particular genre, or did you decide that it would encompass anything and everything depending on your musical moods?
Well, I believe that it would definitely fit in a classical genre, but I didn't want it to be limited to that, because I think my life experience was not just limited to just one particular kind of appreciation of one genre of music. Mm-hmm. And so in the piece, I wanted people to hear all the various influences, times, experiences. I mean, there's another part, a movement that you hear me playing the clavinet. And the clavinet was very significant in my life. I mean, I got my first clavinet when I was around 17 years of age. And the clavinet for me was like having a guitar. The guitar was a favorite instrument of mine, but I did not play guitar. I played keyboards, and I never really, I mean, there are those, yes, that can play guitar and as well, a string instrument as well as a keyboard instrument. But I took the clavinet and was able to, in playing it, give it the kind of musical expression that I felt it could have. And so it was in '72 that I did the song Superstition,
Yes.
which was sort of a mini thought that had a guitar playing that part. It was just me on the clavinet. And so this piece I wrote when I first got my clavinet. And so that became a part of the piece later on.
One of the things that I thought was really interesting, I enjoyed the little sort of interlude that you did when you were playing a series. You were playing a series of minor seconds, and it was punctuated by a bassoon solo. I thought that was very interesting. What was that section all about? It is a little whimsical. I'm not sure whether whimsy was what you were aiming for, but that's how it came across to me. Remember that section, ding, 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 that part.
Is that?
It's a section where you were on the keyboard, and it came off to me like you were doing a series of minor seconds where you're going dee 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 ding ding ding, and it was underlined by bassoon solo.
Okay.
Yeah.
That really was sort of a right after the
Yes.
yes. Ding 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 ding
Yes.
ding 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 ding.
Yes.
That was more kind of like sort of really, yeah. How'd you go? I mean, it was me kind of like it's almost like looking at the world, like looking at things, sort of smiling at them.
Sort of a wry sense
Yeah.
of humor type thing.
Yeah, and then from that going to a place that kind of had a sort of a classical fusion feel, classical jazz fusion feel a little bit, where, again, we were taking it from a dun 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 from dun 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 dun, and I think it's a little Gershwin in there, like, and then just really kind of bringing again kind of a snapshot, an audio snapshot of some of those things that I discovered along the way. And then obviously you hear the do 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 do, so that was sort of a play, kind of remembering all the various little, I don't want to say nursery rhyme kind of things, but so it was just again a celebration
Yes.
of discovery.
And one thing I noticed in the work that also jumped out at me is that you didn't include much brass. You had one French horn, and you also didn't include a drum set. Now, did you not include those types of instruments on purpose? Were you going for an overall softer sound in the work, or they had nothing to do with anything?
Well, I wanted people to, I think there would be an expectation for me to do that.
Aha.
And I didn't want to fulfill their expectation in that sense. I wanted them to, for instance, with a harmonica piece, I wanted them to feel what we were doing and kind of like move their bodies to it, because it's all so kind of like a traveling, a blowing through space, a kind of, you know, grasping on and being able to feel that the pulse within yourself, and to ride along with everything that was happening, to travel. And so, you know, where we did use a little cymbal, you know, on the sort of ragtime feel part of the piece, that was sort of necessary. But I think this other, I wanted it to be not so percussive that you would get hung up more in the rhythm than letting your own spirit take you in that rhythm.
And it's funny, I was, during one part of the piece, I was sitting there, I think it was during the section where the percussionist was playing, it wasn't a set of maracas, I forget what that instrument was back there that he was shaking. But during that section, I suddenly thought of your two recordings, My Cherie Amour and Yester Me, Yester You, Yesterday, where Benny Benjamin is playing behind you with brushes, you know, doing his Benny thing. And I remember thinking, boy, if I could just get Benny back here to play under that section, it would be just great.
Benny was so incredible, and he would have done such a magnificent job, because he was able to take, you know, a piece of music like that and play it soft, and yet still give it the same kind of expression as if he were playing it loud. He's the only drummer in the world that I've known that actually you could go on stage with just him playing drums and you'd be all right.
Oh, man.
And then obviously if it's him and James Jamerson on bass,
Oh, yes.
you'd be all right. It'd be incredible.
Oh, it was great. And I also enjoyed the fact that you included both oboe and English horn in your work, and because I'm a former oboist, and
Wow.
you know, in the 6 degrees of separation, you know, my oboe teacher Ron Odemark played for you on "I Never Dreamed You'd Leave."
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yes, yes,
Wow.
yeah. Paul reminded me of that, so I thought it was wonderful. And I remember when I was in undergrad school that Ron would, you know, he was always coming in saying, "I just came from Motown. I had to do a recording session at Motown." So he was basically the Motown oboist all those years. Was there anything? Did you have any special thoughts or ideas about how you wanted to use those particular instruments, the oboe and English horn?
You know, really a lot of that, again, was the marriage of myself and Paul Reiser. Paul really orchestrated the piece for me, and you can see, you know, that essence in a lot of the piece. I spoke with Paul about it, gave him some ideas about what I wanted to hear, but it was really him that orchestrated the piece and really helped to bring it alive.
So you basically let him have carte blanche with general.
Yeah, you know, obviously, you know, me checking to make sure that, you know, but we never ever, we never lose our places with how things, you know, should happen.
Yes.
Because there's that, you know, I don't know if it's a Detroit connection, I don't know what it is, but it's an incredible thing of just maybe for knowing each other for the time that we've known each other, and having the respect and love for each other's ability, you know, and me respecting his genius.
When you, as you and Paul worked together, did you return to your thoughts of how you did The Secret Life of Plants, did that have any influence on how you prepared this piece, your work on that album?
You know, it's funny. When I was working on The Secret Life of Plants, I too was working with some of this here. And there was a time that I was thinking about using, a part of what I had in this piece, maybe, in a part of the music that I had done for The Secret Life of Plants, but it really didn't work for me. I just felt that the Sketches of a Life was something that was taking a life of its own. And so as much as I didn't have it finished when I was doing The Secret Life of Plants, I knew that certain things just didn't work with it. I mean, there's a thing that I did in Secret Life of Plants called Race Babylon, which is very, very avant-garde kind of a, and it could have worked in a part of this piece as well, but it didn't feel right. It was too crazy. But I'm sure, as I do have an idea for, now that I've done this once, I want to do it again. And I think the technology has made things more accessible for me to take everything that I played and, through MIDI, putting it on the, putting it from being on the computer to putting it on music and all that, in notation for the orchestra musicians to be able to read it. And so I am challenged to come up with something really, really incredible, because I just love so many different kinds of, music and rhythms, and, without one even thinking about it, I might change and go to a slower one or a faster one, because I think it's kind of how life is. Life is always sort of an unexpected thing. I mean, we try to keep it an even keel, but, thank God for change.
As for Sketches of a Life, you're such a big proponent of electronic keyboards, and you've been working with these types of instruments for years now. Why did you decide to orchestrate Sketches of a Life with acoustic orchestral instruments as opposed to you doing all the instruments yourself on synthesizer or on the computer?
Because I always imagined it acoustically done.
Aha.
And, I think that, again, that's something that I could have done very easily just myself, but the whole thing is bringing other musicians in, other players in, them being a part of this whole celebration.
And do you plan to go back into the studio and do Sketches of a Life and release it commercially as a studio release?
It definitely is not out of the realm of possibilities. I would like to, go back and really get, I made a couple of mistakes, as I talked about. But,
a couple of spots, huh?
Yeah, a couple of spots that are a little crazy. But I'd love to do it, again in the studio and really get it perfectly fine.
And you mentioned that you would like to do more classical pieces. Do you have anything specific in mind, or as far as what kind of scoring you want to do? Whether you want to do a larger work for symphony orchestra, for instance, or another chamber work? What do you have in mind for future classical pieces?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always writing and working on things, and when I get something to a place that I can say, give it a sense that it has a body of of work within it, movements that I can say, okay, this really works good with this, that, etc. Then I would give it a name and say yes. But I definitely am always working on various genres of music, various styles, excite me and definitely influence me.
And you, I believe I read on the internet that you were starting to work on a gospel piece, a performance piece in the gospel vein. Is that true? Um, can you tell me a little bit more about that piece or what you're working on?
Well, it's called Gospel Inspired by Lula. And Lula was my mother's first name. And so it really is a celebration. She always wanted me to do, a project giving praise to God for just the blessings that I've received, and as well as she in all of us. And so I said, I'm going to do it, Ma, do it. And unfortunately, she passed away in a time where she was getting different songs for me and ideas and all that kind of stuff. And, again, that thing about life, we have today because we don't know about tomorrow.
And you had written a lot of songs with your mother and also with Sylvia Moy in your earlier career. I know that your career spans almost 45 years, if not 45 years. And during the earlier part of your career, which is when I came to know you, you were part of the Motown stable of stars. And during those years, did you, what was it like working with Henry Cosby and Clarence
Sylvia,
Paul? I'm sorry?
yeah, Sylvia and Henry,
Yes,
you know,
yes.
it was incredible because obviously Sylvia was a great lyricist, and she brought a kind of rhythm to different songs and different concepts that she, was like had a kind of a street feel to it for back then, and I felt that the three of us, Henry Cosby, Sylvia, and myself, we made up for a wonderful writing team, and we were able to do some great things together. My Cherie Moore, she wrote the lyric to. Henry Cosby kind of just gave me ideas as to how maybe the structure should be, chord structure, and he did some of the arrangements of various songs, and we all worked it together. We worked it out.
Back then, when you were working under those particular conditions, did you feel were you as musically fulfilled when your songs were being when the soundtracks were being done by the Funk Brothers, as opposed to later years when you did your own music and you played your own instruments? Did you feel differently before than you did after? You know what I mean? When you started doing your own instrumentations in the '70s, did that make you feel musically more free, or were you as musically satisfied when you were working with the Funk Brothers and they were doing your scores?
Well, in the days of the Funk Brothers and the group then, those were incredible days for what they were. When I did my own thing, working with Sarita and got more into some of the stuff that I wanted to do, those were wonderful days as well, because it was something that, gave me more accessibility to writing, and obviously becoming familiar with the Moog synthesizer and all that. By the time we got to 71, 72, me working with Bob Margoloff and Malcolm Sesso and their, expanding, Tonto's Expanding Headband, it was a great time for discovery. And so all of the various times that I can remember, as far back as when I was 11, were all magical moments.
When you were composing the soundtrack music for The Woman in Red, for instance, was that a different type of process for you than when you do your normal writing of songs and creating your studio albums?
It was different only in that, you knew that there was a certain thing you had to write about. That wasn't as challenging as was when I did the documentary, writing the music for that, scoring that. We came up with a technique which I'd like to maybe someday show blind students or blind people in who would like to get into scoring, how I did the scoring, or working with A Secret Life of Plants, and how I was able to do it timing-wise perfectly fine with the film, matching the actual visuals that were happening. And that was lots of fun. It was challenging, yes it was, but it was really lots of fun because it was a matter of setting the timing of the songs and the various things that were happening to make sure they matched what was going on visually at the same time and various times.
And I think on that note, I think we'll stop. And I'd like to thank you for your time in doing this interview for the Library of Congress. I hope you've enjoyed your experience with the library.
It's been a wonderful experience just seeing all the various things, being able to touch what I was able to touch, and the manuscripts of Stravinsky, and come on, forget about it. And to have touched the Beethoven manuscript, and to be able to listen to some of the music that was done on the 78s back in the day, in the 30s, and the 1902 and 1916, hearing Marian Anderson, and it's amazing how technology was then to how it is today. And so I know that what I will do as a Christmas or birthday present for me, and my son was born the same day as myself, and just for my family, is come back here to the Library of Congress so that I can really see, touch, and hear some more incredibleness.
Well, we certainly enjoy having you back, and we thank you for the commission. We thank you for the concert last night. We wish you much success in the future. We know you'll have a ball tomorrow night at the White House when you receive the Gershwin Prize. And so on behalf of the Library of Congress, thank you.
Thank you.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.